Hey everyone, welcome to Progressive HR Live. We are having some technical difficulties, so if you do see this live streaming now, great for you. StreamYard has told us that LinkedIn Live, there's having problems. If you go to this LinkedIn Live event, that you don't get an error message, but you can go to my personal profile and look on the banner, and then you'll see this streaming. Of course, I had to check this out, and unfortunately, I can't see my own banner. So we're just going to have to kind of jockey things around and deal with this, and hopefully we can have a great live here with Gita Kulkarni. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Gita, welcome. I think you're still on mute. There we go. Okay. Oh, and funny enough that our conversation today is about humor and levity.
Right.
So in stressful situations like this, you just have to have a little bit of levity and humor. So I'm going to start our introduction over. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Progressive HR Live. I am your host, Corinne Woodman-Hollebeck today, and I'm the founder of Progressive HR and a LinkedIn top voice in company culture. I'm here with Gita Kulkarni, and we're going to be talking about levity and humor. And Gita is the founder of the Humor Edge, an organization that works with HR and founders to bring levity to teams. How are you today, Gita?
I'm doing good. Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for showing up. Yeah. So so this is what we're going to do, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Gita the first question, and then I'm going to see if I can work out these technical difficulties. I know that Tim Whitley has joined us, but I'm not sure he can see the stream. So Tim, if you're there, please drop a message in the comments and let us know that you can see the stream. So, all right, Gita. How can humor in the workplace lead to innovation?
Yes. So, it's the breeding ground for innovation, right? If you think about innovation and what you're doing when you're innovating, you have to be in full creative mode, right? And in order to do that, you have to feel relaxed and safe, somewhat light in mind, but yet focused. And if you think about humor at its essence and its core, it is a lot of those things, and it breeds a lot of those things. So in order for and I'm going to kind of consider like evolutionary innovation, which businesses do, you really want to have this kind of notion of openness, psychological safety, active listening, creative expression. Those are the four pillars in an environment where you're doing innovation, right? So if you have a product and you're seeking to make it better, people want to feel like their voice is heard and they have an ability to kind of spitball out a creative idea, right? And feel like that is safe to say, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of, and the need for, you need to have these four elements in place to kind of drive innovation. Because if you don't, if you think about the reverse of this, people don't feel like they want to say what they're, how to innovate and what a great idea is, or they don't want to share because their voice isn't being heard, right? You think about the opposite of those things, that's where innovation gets stifled, right? People have fear. So that's a little bit about, and I will say, especially when we're doing that evolutionary innovation, if you think about a product and why a product is better with a company, it's usually because of collective genius. So think about those things: openness, psychological safety, active listening, creative expression is pillars that you need to have in place for innovation with your team.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I wanted to let everybody know that Tim says that he can see us. So that's great. I unfortunately can't see anybody right now, so I greatly apologize. If you're joining us for the streaming of with Gita Kulkarni, please go ahead and add introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're streaming from, and how are you doing today. And that'd be great if we know that there's more people joining us, because we are having some technical difficulties here. And my greatest apologies, Gita. This is not how things usually go. But again, gotta have the positive mindset. Yes.
Yeah. Roll with the punches. Exactly.
Punches. So let's get into the next question. How can you drive employee engagement with humor?
Yeah. You know, if you think about what's going on these days, so there's just people are so distracted. Their mind is fractioned between what's going on in their work and what's going on in their home and what's going on in the world, independent of their house, right? Their household. And you need something that can kind of, when you have something important to say, and you need to drive something like employee engagement to get the best and brightest from your employees' minds, you need something like humor to stop them in the tracks, right? That's just kind of a, it's a, if you even think about what people are doing when they seek solace in their mind, they're probably going to things that kind of bring pleasure, bring humor to the mind. So you kind of want to simulate some of that in the work with driving employee engagement. So, humor is kind of a great way to do that. One thing I'll say about humor is that it's genuine, right? So if you're out there to post a joke or to put one out there or to, add a laugh to somebody's already stated joke, if you will. I mean, people, if they find it funny, they'll laugh. So it's genuine, right? And you can't, um, yeah, it's just genuine, right? So they won't laugh if it's not funny. The second thing is that humor is a great personalizer and unifier. So you think about if you have a funny theme, or maybe if you take something, we're working with a lot of companies as they kind of go through the end of the year, we're in this kind of double down mode where everybody's like, I got to get the budgets for 2024, or I've got to clear out my end of year goals for 2023. That's a big thing on topic today. And so we are doing cute things like an NFL theme, or we're doing cute things where we're doing 70s and kind of saying, race to, hustle, and like the hustle song from the 70s, right? And if you think about even your favorite characters, Ted Lasso or the Jetsons, everybody finds those things funny for their own reasons, right? And that's the beauty of humor, is that if you find something that's funny, people will laugh, probably for a very common reason, that it is entertaining. But the reason, that underlying reason why it's entertaining, is that it's creating a connectivity with them at a personal level that you just can't simulate on a mass scale, which humor really does really efficiently. And the other thing that, with humor, and I'll say this, especially in the world of HR, people want humor. I mean, whether it's HR or whether you're in finance or accounting. I mean, I implement technology systems as one of my first businesses that I have set up. People, the stuff is dense. The stuff is, there's a lot there. And if you can lighten up the absorption of that with humor along the way, people, it just kind of, it's like, I got to listen to something heavy, I'm going to go into something light. I'm going to listen to something heavy, I'm going to get something light, right? So it kind of, it's healthy for the mind, because we're not always 100% deep in that stuff. So it's easier for the mind to kind of digest and process, if you will. So yeah.
So, what are some of the ways that you work with organizations, with teams, and with founders or CEOs to bring humor
Yeah,
to organizations?
absolutely. So, a couple ways. One is with founders, having their voice established in humor and finding their own personal humor is something that I spend a lot of time with them doing. So, and founders, when they're in the work, they're so busy in the work, right? Innovating and applying their mindset to kind of perfecting their pitch and their product and the financials, and making sure that everything is on track with milestones. And so, one of the most effective ways when it comes to driving growth in a business without having to, I'll say this, without having to put a lot of capital, is to bring in a really enjoyable personality, right? Whether you're asking for investment, whether you're trying to bond the team, whether you're trying to move everybody to the North Star in a great way, you can do that through storytelling with humor. You can be funny and kind of present your success or the accomplishments you have as a team through humor, right? You can galvanize and get people around you. And so humor is a great way to do that. I work with founders. I also work with a lot of HR teams, right, who want to kind of rebrand themselves. A lot of people see HR and they're like, Don't and or they're like, they just see them as kind of a due process type of team.
Mhm.
And so I spend time with these groups kind of going, hey, let's rebrand you, let's re-image you, right? And humor is a great way to get people's attention and to be like, hey, we're people too. We're funny. I know you want to consider us all like real straight laced and uptight, but we do deliver value, right? And so that's a great, if you message that, almost call your spade and be like, I know you all think I'm like the Debbie Downer at the party, but I truly am out to like help your, your human, your human operations, if you will, right? So it's a great way to get people's attention, to reshift mindset, to sometimes call you're funny. And like I said, I mean, I will say those who use humor in their pitches and their presentations, 19%, they garner 19% over, the regular ask. So if you think about those numbers and you're asking for money, $1 million with a 19% premium, I take that any day of the week. So
So when we were first talking, you said that every person has their own voice of humor. So, like for example, you can't just decide that you like Steve Carell, and so you want to be have your voice be like Steve Carell. Like,
yes,
it may just not work,
right.
or right, and you may be suited to more. I don't know, like Mr. Bean funny, but
Yes.
but everybody has
Yes.
their own voice and they have to find their own voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So,
usually, oh, go ahead, please. Yeah.
oh no, no, no. I was gonna say before I was gonna say how do you find your voice? But then Tim came in with a quick comment and he said, and humor isn't something that AI can do well.
Totally. Exactly. Yes.
Yes, but see, I kind of say that's a possibility because do you remember that commercial with Ryan Reynolds where he's it Ryan Reynolds? Yeah, it was Ryan Reynolds where he asked AI to write a commercial for Mint, and the commercial. I mean, the way that the Chat GPT wrote the commercial for Mint and the way that Ryan delivered it was hilarious. So
Okay.
AI may not be can't do funny, but like a funny person can make ChatGPT the way delivered
Yes.
is funny.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, we're in this kind of like really interesting place where, I mean, can AI kind of deliver on this emotional, awareness that we seek, that we need, we crave from each other. I agree. I mean, and humor, I will say, is like a lot of delivery. It is. I would, you'd weight it more in favor of like a 60 to 70% slant in delivery as opposed to like the actual content, right? I mean, if you think about Ryan Reynolds, I mean, my word, he can say the most, just mundane things, but he can say them in yet really funny ways, right? And so that gives you kind of a really good example of somebody that does it. And I think, with founders and even just founders, but people, what I'm seeing a lot of, especially with leaders, I'm seeing typically an expression of three different types of humor. One is this kind of lighthearted, upbeat, witty humor, just constantly getting the beat. I always give the example of Kelly Ripa as the one who expresses and emotes that well. She kind of stays up
Mhm.
on her humor. And if you see your show every day, you can see this really strongly in action. And then the other person is Tina Fey. So I've seen a lot of CEOs that are especially innovators who have like a Tina Fey slant. So Tina Fey has this really good ability to kind of go deep in telling a story, get really precise and specific, grab really good hold of the English language, pick really choice words to kind of express stuff, get you really there on the imagery level, and just kind of drive home point, and especially a funny point. And I see that a lot with founders and leaders because they're driving vision, and so they're thinking of like this depth of this deep level, and they're kind of going specific into particular things. So I see that humor, and I also I'll have them look at some of these examples. The other one is Aubrey Plaza, which has a very like she's very I almost say
Right.
stale based dry humor, somewhat dark at times, and she just kind of delivers, and she just keeps her face real straight laced, right? And you sometimes you'll see that in like an engineering humor where they'll play off of like very specific entendres or specific references, if you will. Sorry. And these are kind of some of the examples. You know, like you said, what you watch and what you observe, you may love slapstick, but you may really feel comfortable expressing and emoting in a different way, like you said. I spend a lot of time with, leaders kind of trying to help them find their humor. Usually I don't ask them to go out and look at stuff to kind of find their sense of self as much as like write something, see where you kind of, how your humor just comes out on a natural basis. And then we tend to find that and then kind of pair you with something that's similar so that you can see how others do it successfully. If you want to kind of take yours and you learn from it, right? Then you learn like, oh, I do have a Ryan Reynolds kind of funny in delivery. I kind of enjoy that. I want to absorb that more, and you can play with the theatrics of how you deliver. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. I think that definitely answered the question, is like, what main types of humor are there out there for founders and for
Yes.
HR? I'm going to interject here and for comments, and I believe this is Alex Kuchev, and he says GPT is often cracking jokes about wizards somehow. I've never seen that.
I'm gonna go on now and try to like crack, Chat GPT now and see if they bring up some wizard references. Good to know.
And I originally thought this was Tim Whitley because, he's an HR tech wizard, but then he says Alex Kuchev, wizard jokes are hilarious.
Okay. I'll have to see. I'm gonna write this stuff down. I've got to okay. Sorry.
But yeah, I've never seen wizard jokes on Chat GPT. So I've never even asked Chat GPT to tell me a joke, but that would be an interesting experiment.
No doubt, right? Yeah, no joke, right? So
no joke. Yes. Going back to what you said about Tina Fey. Tina Fey is probably one of my favorite person to get quotes from. And totally, I see what you're saying about her ability to do the deep storytelling and then like produce the imagery. Because one of my favorite quotes from her is saying, like, listen, you can't be the kid at the top of the water slide sitting there not wanting to go down when there's a line behind you. And like, she was kind of giving us the imagery of like, you need to either make a decision to go down the water slide or you should have went up the water slide.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So she's like, you just can't sit there. You need to go down.
It's hilarious, right? Because you're just, you think of yourself and you maybe even bring yourself to that third grade moment or her third grade moment or what, but that's also a very relatable moment for you, right? Where you're like, oh gosh, I mean, how many times, which is that whole humor is a great personalizer, yet, it's a strong call, right? Because you think of yourself and you think, oh yeah, how many times have I been in my third grade or, younger self and kind of gone, oh, I need to kind of make a decision, and it's a great, to your point, right? She calls on this imagery that we all relate to situationally, so.
And I remember being in improv classes. So like I'm amateur improvist, and you think about how real improv is. And my teacher said the hilarity or the levity in improv is the reality of it, because so many people can relate, because you're just playing yourself. You're playing yourself, but in like this different dimension.
Right. Oh, and talk about a what is it called? A ground where you're innovating. That is that's another set of work that I do. I work with teams to kind of use these principles of improv, right? Because if you think about improv, the reason it's so funny and relatable is because you're doing a lot of yes and, right? You have to accept what the other person gives you. If the person says, hey, we're both pink ponies, we have to be pink ponies for the scene, right? There's no refuting of that statement, right? And then you've got to come in and add to that story, right? And maybe add something funny or add something situationally. The other thing is that there's no mistakes. There's, you're present. I mean, if you think about those dynamics and you bring those to a team, and I'll say, even if you think about improv, we come in and I'm like you, I do improv, and so you ask for one word suggestion as you come into the room, right? So you don't know what you're going to do, and you've got to innovate. And guess what? Your innovation and your innovation unit is is a laugh, and you're doing it on a constant basis, right? And you're getting that feedback and you're moving with it. So if you think about the tenets of innovation, if you can create that great camaraderie and even establish it or reestablish it or bring it alive in teams, you'll see that they're doing this idea building, idea sharing, yesing and being present, because that's what you need to, whether you're Pixar or whether you're developing a heart stent, these things need to be in place, So, um,
So, quick question from Tim Whitley. He says, how do you develop your humor skills? Is it a mindset, not taking things too seriously, or is it a skill that we can develop?
yeah. So, good news is such a great question. Humor lives in all of us. It's just a matter of tapping into it. I will say I am a huge fan of the growth mindset, and this humor has been identified as one of the domains that can be grown through growth mindset through some work done in the 70s by, I forget her name, but um, it
Could
is
you,
absolutely.
could you repeat that again? Because your voice kind of went a little quiet.
Oh, yeah. So humor is a tenet of something that can be developed in the growth mindset in your brain. It can be it can be matured, it can be harnessed. There was a lady, I forget her name, who developed this whole concept around the growth mindset and the fact that there are skills that you can develop with practice. And humor has truly been defined as one of those domains that can be developed. So there is hope for all of us. And to Tim, to your question, can I develop it? Is something you absolutely can develop. It's just a matter of awareness and bringing it about every day. I'll tell like because I'll work with people who are like, I'm not funny. And I will tell you genetically, 3% of the population is not funny. I don't think you're in 3% of the population, but if you have the humor chromosome, or the humor, whatever gene expression, if you will, you can be funny. It's just a matter of it's kind of like it's hidden, or it's kind of covered, if you will. So you just have to express it more. It's kind of like I'm a runner and I perfect my sport and bring down my times by just constantly going out and running track practice, right? And before I ran track practice, I was north of 9-minute mile or whatever, right? But now with track practice, I can really dial down and just kind of with constant repetition, I'm developing that humor skill. So it can be developed. That said, there are definitely some people, like, kid you not, Seinfeld, his gene and his family is pretty predominant for expression of funny. So there is some people that are naturally born funny and just have it in them. But for many of us, it's something that can be developed. And by the way, everybody thinks of them that performative. I've got to be on, playing a banjo or have my tambourines in hands to be funny. And there are so many opportunities where you can feed somebody's funny. You don't have to be the originator of the humor, and you still get that association with funny, right? And also keep in mind that a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be funny and everybody's just going to laugh at every single thing I have to say. Comedians, professionally trained people in this concept, have a 50% hit ratio, which means that 50% of their jokes are not funny, right? So consider the fact that if you're getting a 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 hit rate, don't give up. So
yeah, because what we see from comedians is actually a practiced set.
Yes, a scripted.
Yeah, we just think that this person is like just automatically funny, but what behind the scenes is like they've told this joke
100 times, right?
Times, yeah.
Exactly.
Make sure that they perfect it, yeah.
Yeah. Played with the delivery, played with the pause, played with where things would elevate, played with just had people in front of them, different audiences. So they have all of this going for them, right? And you're kind of using that as your benchmark, and that's not necessarily where you need to be. And oh, by the way, the other side about your humor is that it lies in this authentic sense of self, and you're in what kind of moves you and drives you. So when I'm having people kind of say, I want to find my funny, I want to be more funny in work, and I'm like, what are you passionate about? What drives you? What moves you? Because oftentimes that kind of that enchants people, so that, just know that, right? If you're really amazed with like what's it called, Dungeons and Dragons, you can go like 20 miles deep on Dungeons and Dragons. People find it entertaining, right? So
And you could create jokes around it
Oh
too.
my gosh, right? Because you're so into it, right? So I saw Tim wrote, oh, something, and
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can go back to that, but I wanted
okay.
to quickly ask Alex. Alex, if you're still on, can you chat GPT who the person that came up with the woman who came up with the idea of that humor is a tenant in your brain? If you can quickly chat GPT that, I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah.
So, and then going back to what Tim said, I agree. I've found for myself that I have to be okay with people not laughing at every joke, which does happen a lot. So,
Okay, and good point on this. So, by the way, for those who express humor, like humor is a proxy to intelligence. It's I don't, if nobody's told you that yet in life. Understand that the smartest, the smart people in this world have a sense of humor, and so when you go out to when you put humor out there, right? Whether it's a subtle joke or it's an overt, it's a dad joke, whatever it may be, um, you're getting positive association and a subconscious, a subtext of intelligence. That association is happening in the person who's consuming your humor's mind, right? So just know that you've got points at the bank for kind of executing that humor. So even if the joke doesn't land, kid you not, like you're already you've got kind of the effect of what you're kind of somewhat seeking, even if it wasn't like a processed laugh. And the other side too is that sometimes people are afraid to laugh, right? So
mhm.
keep that kind of like, there's the execution of the joke and then there's the laugh. And so especially these days, people are afraid to do like anything, so don't let that be your guidepost for, okay, maybe I'm not funny, and don't let that shut you down. So
Speaking of that, I think this is Alex. I'm not sure because it shows up as LinkedIn user. So if this is not Alex, please let us know who this is. In your experience, Gita, how do you suggest handling a situation where humor doesn't land well and might offend someone due to the cultural differences or sensitivities? What's the best fallback approach to maintain a positive environment? And
yeah.
I think, again, I'm assuming this is Alex, but if it's not Alex, I apologize. They got to jump on my next question. So I was going to ask, how can we um, how can we overcome the fear that humor will create, or humor is microaggression, or humor will create microaggressions?
Yeah. So it's a fascinating thing to me. I do technology systems. I think my mind actually operates stronger in Excel than it does in like a Word document because I love structure. So I studied. I'm like, I would, when I first kind of came into this world of like, I want to use humor, I use it in my work, but when I really want to kind of teach around it, what fails? How does humor fail? And it's usually one of three things, classic rubric style, Excel. It either offends the person, it doesn't, the audience or the person doesn't relate to the joke, or just doesn't understand the joke, right? So these are the reasons where humor is a failure bomb, if you will. So so know that. And typically if you're going to go out and put humor out there, I would always try to, especially if you're going into scripted storytelling or you're going to go out and have to present, even within team, especially if you're going out to start this on your own and you're like, I want to be a little bit funny or express my humor amongst everyone. Think of those things, and see if you can, and even try them with someone. I wouldn't try them with somebody that's similar to you and thinks very similar in mindset to you. I'd almost say, hey, I want to play this joke off with group. If you have some concerns, I frankly, if you're like, I'm not even sure this is going to land well, I'd probably just take it off the table and use something different. Just, and then I would say if you've already put that joke out into the ether and you've said the joke, my quick response to that is I apologize, right? I mean, just come out and just, I don't add more humor to the joke that's disrespectful. It's kind of like a sorry but not sorry, a sorry with a but. It doesn't, it kind of takes back or retracts from that. So I always, if I put something out there that offends, I will always be like, I apologize. And then be sincere about it, right? Because then people will oftentimes kind of come back and understand that you're being sincere about it, and accept the fact that, that happen, right? And be a little bit more receptive to kind of the situation, if you will. So, because you really can't move past that and just keep adding like gasoline to this like
Mm-hmm.
bad joke. I mean, that's just we've seen that even professionally happen. You're right, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, ah, you know. So, um, yeah,
So it basically, apologize and be sincere
yes,
about it, and then maybe try it out with try your joke or your conversation or your with someone to see kind of someone not like yourself to see how it lands.
yes.
And then you said a third thing, and I can't remember what that was.
I think Yeah, I think that was it. I think just be, the sorry. I mean, I'll give you an example, right?
Hmm.
So I had a CEO who I'm coaching, and when he initially came to me, he's like, I tell these really I have this kind of notion of like everybody. I tell this joke where I talk about being an all-American and lettering and print playing like for my basketball team at Stanford, and we're doing this funny thing as a team. And he just kind of goes into that spirit of like talking about this, and he kind of has all this I don't know, I wouldn't say joke set around it, but he has this a whole set of mechanical jokes that kind of allude to this world of him being this all-star basketball player. And I'm going, and so he's like, this is what I do, and nobody laughs. And I'm like, it's not. And he tries to use it to kind of evoke team spirit and everything. And I'm like, okay, I conceptually get where you're coming from, where you're trying to say, okay, I'm in a basketball team and I want to do team stuff. But like some of your audience won't have ever been in a college basketball team, high performing team, um, won't get this whole deep kind of where you're going with just deep water discussion around like going in and like being all American track star or all American best basketball star or whatever. Like they just won't necessarily latch onto that and just be in it with you, right? So which is a bias, right? It's his bias thinking
Hmm.
everybody understands that. So this is that whole stuff. This is that whole idea of like tell your jokes to someone else and see why they're not landing, because they can help you uncover that bias that you have within, right? So
Yeah, and I think it's a lot about is like when you're telling a joke or when you're making a pun or when you're trying your humor is
mhm.
thinking like, is this relatable? Can other people that maybe you're not like me relate to
Relates
it?
totally. That's and
So
that, yeah.
yeah, so like I take the example of I don't know if everybody remembers the SNL skit with Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley, where they pretended to be Chip and Dale dancers. Well, not everybody has seen Chip and Dale dancers, but you can relate to it because everybody understands Chip and Dale dancers.
Right, right,
So,
right.
and whether it was offensive or not, I'm pretty sure it was offensive to some people, but they can still relate to it. So,
Relate to it. Yeah, exactly. And they had to kind of almost multi-thread it, right? I mean, they brought in Chris Farley to do the set because it's kind of like Chippendale Dancer, Dust is, kind of with the fit and finish of Chris Farley, like doesn't necessarily, that's that juxtaposition element that you see in humor. Where if people don't get to Chippendale, maybe they'll get the fact that there's like this male dancer and he's doesn't necessarily have the fit finish of what you would see as a typical male dancer, like it just there's a lot of like safety that they're almost sometimes even engineering into like the humor so that people can kind of relate, find that point of connectivity,
mhm,
so think about that, right? I mean, so and that may even be things to think about when you're thinking about your jokes, right? I mean, I think I threw out the Jetsons. I don't know if anybody,
watches the
not
Jetsons.
everybody exactly. Right? I mean, that's a great example of like, I don't know if anybody even knows the Jetsons, whether they were geographically able to watch it or if it from a time period point of view, even understand the Jetsons, right? So those are things to think about, especially if you're out there trying to execute humor. Just be like you said, be aware of that and know that you're trying to create this relatability. That's why, yeah. So
So, to my last question, how can human resource professionals leverage humor to enhance their work and to serve their organizations?
I think there's tremendous opportunity for HR professionals to kind of use this stuff. I mean, if you think about human resources, you're in the business of being to make the human capital organization better, right? And why not do that through something so personal as emotion,
Mhm.
emotional goal, right? Um, and so I think, a lot of people, you can do a lot of culture setting, rebranding your culture, retaking that stereotype. I know, it's hard if you have a vortex and you're around sometimes people that are all about mm, your same thought. You may not know that there's this whole different point of view that people perceive of HR, right? Or whatever it may
Mhm.
be. And so you can even be funny about, hey, I know everybody thinks HR is here at the party and like life's gonna, go, but you can embrace it and kind of be funny, be like, we're out to help bond you all too, right? And be funny about it, right? Um, you can do funny videos that show like password protection and like you can there's a lot of different things that you don't want to go past. There's certain boundaries you don't want to go past, but there's a lot of room and range to actually be funny within HR, right? And kind of maybe even call the stereotype that you have, because when you do, it almost kind of like lets everybody like, oh cool, I thought you were like, oh, now I realize, like, you kind of that you're kind of, sometimes we get nervous when you walk into the room, right? You can be funny about that, right? And you can play with that idea. I think also just be open, create that reception so that you can look at things through a little bit of like a lighthearted optic, right? I know there's some sensitive talk like fire, hire. You don't want to. There's not a lot of jokes there, but there's a lot of places in the middle of that you can be funny with an HR team, and you can really get far. Because, like we said, when you use it, people realize they're like, "Oh, they're smart," So it gives you points and street cred. It gives you ability to do things like develop that learning strategy, right? We realize, okay, they're not just pencil pushers or compliance pushers. I realize these people are human. So if you're able to I'll say, even if you're the HR team and you show that you're able to laugh about work and enjoy work, like that's such a precedence and a cadence
Mhm.
for the rest of the organization. So be that leader, be that example, right? So
Yeah, so I would make the joke that I didn't even know that HR and street cred were words that could go together. So
right, right, exactly, right. You could do that. And you'd be like, people like, oh, woo, and it kind of juxtaposes the mind, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, never knew Korean had really thought about, like, like it really changes your, yeah.
yeah,
So
or my street cred's Fifth Avenue.
right. I mean, there's a lot of jet, right there, exactly, right. And you could, there's
There's
tons. And
just different ways that you can play with the puns and the I don't want to say methodology or mythology. What's the word I'm looking for, Gita? Um,
methodology, just the acumen, the word,
the word for like when you
pun,
that
method,
like a pun, but like
wordplay.
metaphors.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would get there eventually. So
Yeah. I mean, which is a great, like, I mean, it's such a, gosh, you brought me into a place where I was thinking about it. Like, people want this from us. People want this from HR. Man, if HR can be funny, I can be funny at work, right? Like, and if HR knows how to do this within good operating confines, I know I've got some room for it, right? People are, especially with everything that's going on, work from home, returning to work, we don't know, everybody's, you can bring a lot of, you can kind of break through screens and break through mindsets with humor. So I encourage you to just think about that, right? Yeah.
before we go into our summary, I know I flashed this on the screen already, but Tim said we often say that you have to laugh so you don't cry.
Yeah. Right. And especially I'm like, okay, so I hear this a lot in HR too, right? Where they're like, we have to laugh it's like self-therapy, right? Which it's so true, right? I mean, it is, people, gosh, we have to laugh so you don't cry. Like, we can say that in the context of work and HR, but we can say that in the context of life. I mean,
Mhm.
we've got a lot going on right now. People are stressed. And I mean, even if you think about this physiologically, humor is shutting down cortisol, and it's running through that same channel, serotonin, right? So physiologically, you're shutting that, what you said, Tim, you have to laugh to shut down the cortisol so that, you can let the endorphins and serotonin kick in that same channel, right? So, okay, I'm just going to stop nerding out about that. But yes, yes.
Oh, okay, everyone. So we go live next week with Tracy Spanenberg, from the Chief People Officer of the Granite Group. She's going to join us to talk about generation. She's going to join us to talk about generative AI and ChatGPT in HR. If LinkedIn was working for me today with the streaming, I would grab that link to that show and add it to the comments. But I can't do that now. So I'm going to do that after our show. So if you're watching now, you can either go onto my page and look at my events and join for the live with Tracy, or you can just wait until after the show and I will post the link in the comments. So kind of as we're rounding out here, Gita, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any last comments or questions for the audience before we go?
No, I would just encourage everybody to be funny. Life's a lot more enjoyable when you put a little bit of laughter into it. So find your funny and find funny in the day. So
Yes, I 100% agree. Thank you, audience, for joining us, and thank you for being, patient and understanding with our tech issues. We'll see you next week for Progressive HR Live episode with Tracy Spanenberg. Thank you, Resourceful Humans. We'll see you soon.
thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.